Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me share a quote with you. The great Les Brown once said, "You can't see the picture when you're in the frame." If you've felt stuck in your fitness, mindset, or life as a whole, head down to the link in the show notes and reach out to learn more about Project Endure Coaching so that we can help you step outside of the frame and bridge the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. We can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 140. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very, very, very special guest in Long Island, New York, Stelios Karakonstantis. Stelios, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Perfect pronunciation, by the way.
Of course. I was practicing before we hit record, and I'm glad I got it right. And if people couldn't decipher from that last name, you are Greek. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the Greek culture and what that means to you, and maybe blend that in, if you can, into who you are as a person.
Sure, absolutely. So I think a lot of the Greek culture is rooted in tradition, traditional values, close-knit type of environment. And, there's a lot of, even though, we're in present times, there are these sprinkles of these lessons that we learn from mythology and all of these ancient stories that have been passed down, whether that be the Odyssey, Hercules, Achilles, all these things they are still woven into the culture, and we take a lot. I do still think we take a lot of those values along with the Greek Orthodox faith. A lot of that is it really reinforces what the Greek culture is, which is, it is this fortitude, this unrelenting work ethic. And I think that's a lot of that was instilled in me as a child. And there is to me, one of the best lessons I kind of learned was this idea of immortality when it comes to Greeks, which is not necessarily physically living forever, but it's more of this doing things that allow you to be remembered throughout history. And I'm not sure if this was a Greek person that said this, maybe it was a Roman or maybe it was someone else, but they say that you truly die when your name has been spoken for the last time. That's actually when you actually die. And that is a big thing in Greek culture. They want to leave their mark. So that definitely played a huge influence in how I grew up.
Wow. There's a lot that I'm sure we will dive into tied back to ancient stories and modern wisdom. But before we get there, so Stelios is quite a name. It's not a name that I hear in everyday conversation. Is there a meaning behind the name Stelios?
Yeah, I believe it means pillar, believe it or not. Like a column or a pillar, something that's kind of stable. From last time I checked. But growing up, I definitely wasn't that by any means. I was still being built very slowly for sure. So I hope I'm living up to the name as of now.
From what I know about you, it seems like you are. And from what you've built from where you live, it seems like you are. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are today, what your life looks like, what do you do for work, and then we'll dive in from there.
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in Franklin Square, Long Island, New York. I grew up with a single mom and my grandparents. They raised me, and from 3 years old, I was playing sports. So I wasn't any good at them, but I always tried. And my parents, they were literally throwing me in everything. It was soccer, baseball, lacrosse. And you know, while I stuck with it throughout the end of my high school career, the thing that I guess resonated with me more was martial arts, and that was really where I understood capability, the teacher-student relationship, and kind of appreciating the process over the
Mm.
product. And that's really where I started to grow. And I think growing up without a father in the house, because my father left my mother and I when I was 6 months old. So my grandfather did step into that role, but he was working also. And being in the dojo with a lot of these guys were federal law enforcement, military, paramilitary organizations. These were type A guys. And having that from 9 years old all the way up into my mid to late 20s, that was a great supplement to what my parents were providing me with at home. And that's kind of where I fell in love also with, I guess, Asian culture and Greek culture, and the common thread being here, there, like this ancient mindset of how to be, how to live your life as a stoic warrior, if you will, where you don't let emotions take over. You allow the capability to create more opportunity for you as you live your life, and you have a good work ethic. So I guess that's kind of how I grew up. I went to Adelphi after I graduated high school. I was supposed to be an attorney. Um, Obviously, that didn't work out. Um, you know, I think uh, just studying and and I think that's really what happened. I kind of lost my way. I let go of my roots, which was athletics, and I tried to kind of follow the recipe that my parents made for me, and that did not work out. I tried it, but that definitely did not work out. So I spent a lot of my life really kind of doing two things at the same time. I was really pursuing my passion of athletics, which then turned into primarily martial arts. But I also had this dichotomy. I had this other thing that was completely counterintuitive to my passion, which was, oh, sit at a desk all day and do your homework and write projects and take these tests that don't mean anything. So that was a constant psychological and spiritual battle that I was fighting for a very long time. Uh, and yeah, that's really how I grew up. It was a very strict household. My grandfather was in the military. He was a Korean War vet. The guy did not mess around at all. I was not allowed to do. I mean, he ran the house like a barracks, which it was great. My mom was also very strict. I also had both of my great grandparents off the boats from Greece. My grandmothers on both sides. They were equally as strict. So yeah, it was a fun house for sure.
Well, it's very clearly shaped you in part into the person you are today. And that person also runs a gym and really has created this community that I got to experience. I had the pleasure of witnessing a few weeks back in Long Island. And so I would love to hear how Stronghold came to be, if you don't mind sharing that story.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what had happened was after I graduated from Adelphi, um, what had happened was I got to a place about midway through my college career. I felt like I was in a bubble. And I don't know what caused this, but I'm like, I need to get uncomfortable, and I just need to really get out of this bubble that I've been in. So I actually studied abroad in China. I went to the University of Beijing. I had taken the language for 4 years at Adelphi. So I was accepted to go there. And I really learned how to immerse and integrate into a culture that was completely different from mine, as opposed to insulating. And I really learned two things there, which was I learned that number one, this the country that we live in is different and special. Um, when I was there, I really did see the oversight that the government does have there. You are restricted. There is not free enterprise like you have here. So that kind of got me into the business mode of things. I'm like, man, look at how. And I had been in Greece for 4 to 5 months prior to that. When after I grad, after that, and I was there and I was just like, man, I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia. Again, not all places are the same, obviously, but I was like, man, there's something that I was not noticing when I was growing up here, which was you really do have the opportunity to really run with what you're passionate about. And that was really shock therapy when I was in Greece for a decent amount of time and in China, going to school there. So after that, I that kind of got it that got the everything kind of flowing. I graduated Delphi. I was taking my LSATs to go into law school. Then I was speaking to lawyers. I was in a bankruptcy firm for a little bit for a very short time. And I'm like, man, this is terrible. This is not me. Just the corporate culture was not me. The work itself was not me, and there's nothing against it. I mean, that's a very noble profession to be an attorney and interpret and defend the law, but it just wasn't me. So I stopped. The whole process of going to law school. My family was not happy. They were extremely disappointed, humiliated, angry, whatever you want to call it, not happy. So I'm like, let me go back to my roots. So I started working at Equinox in Woodbury. I'm sorry, in Park Avenue in New York City. And then I was transferred over to Woodbury on Long Island. And when I was there, I was like, oh, this is really different. Because prior to that, oh, what gym do you work at? It was like Gold's, LA Fitness, Synergy, these basic big box gyms where there was no integrity with the majority of things that they were doing. It was a revolving door, just get as many sales as possible. And I saw this other side at Equinox, which was this more, oh, look, this is a science actually. There's a science behind personal training. You don't have to be a meathead covered in tattoos on steroids doing bodybuilding. Like there's this whole other dichotomy here. So I was there for a little bit. But then just like the law firm, it was just too corporate for me. And it felt soulless. I did learn a lot there, but it was soulless. I felt like people were more interested in what was selling instead of what was helping, to be honest. So then I went back to, I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. I am burning all this down. I'm going to do my own thing. So I'm going to start to pursue my own thing, but I'm like, I need an income. So I started training at the martial arts studio that I trained at my entire life. I had been instructing there throughout high school, throughout college. I'm like, let me go back there. Let me see what's going on. And I became really good at running dojos. I was running 3 of them out of the 10 that the owner had. So I'm like, cool, this is great. But then I noticed, I'm like, wait, we're only open between like 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. I'm like, Jim, these places are only open for 5 hours. There's this whole other empty window in the morning, early and mid afternoon that's not being touched. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm really good at training people in martial arts. I'm good at coaching people. Let me do personal training. And it was really just a side gig. I'm like, hey, so I go to the owner. I was like, hey, listen, I want to do this thing. Let me rent out the dojo. And he's like, no, absolutely not. So I did it anyway. And he had cameras in the place. And he's like, what the hell? He goes, dude, what are you doing? So then I finally convinced him to let me do that, right? Um, Actually, before that, he said no completely, so I had to stop. So then what I had to do was I had to literally go in my car, house to house. I did this for like a year, a little over a year, everywhere from Suffolk County all the way to Queens, which now you're familiar with, so you know that
Oh,
distance now. I was literally doing that for a year. And I had these people because I had a network from training people at these karate dojos. There was 10 all over the Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk County. So I was literally going house to house, not training them karate, fitness. I was training these people. And I was literally living out of my car. Like, I mean, I always had home to go to, but I was like, I'm talking 15, 16 hours in my car. It was horrible, absolutely terrible. I come back, I'm like, okay, Nick, round two, look how many people I have. Here they are. Let me rent this place out. He's like, great, okay, no problem. So I would literally start at 5 a.m. I would train people from 5 a.m. all the way to about 2 o'clock. Then I would go to the other dojo, train people, run the karate school, come all the way back at 8 o'clock at night at a different dojo and train people from, I'm not kidding, 9 o'clock at night to about 11 o'clock at night. And I did that for another entire year. And then just like that, it just started building up and building up and building up. So from there, I took a risk and I emptied out my entire bank account by myself. No investor, no help, no support, nothing. The only support I got was from my clients, but family, no, friends, no, mentor, nothing. And I literally was in a 700 or 800 square foot facility in Franklin Square. That was the first gym, and it was in front of a bus stop, and it had Section 8 housing above. And let me tell you something, that was a very interesting 3 years. And I couldn't even afford mats on the floor. I had a hard plywood floor. I had no money, no girlfriend, no, like nothing, like literally like in the wilderness by myself in this 800 square foot box. And I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And I lived in there like every day, didn't take a vacation, didn't hang out with friends, didn't buy myself anything. I was eating peanut butter and like, what was I would have like a jar of peanut butter and like ramen. And like that was it. Like that was like the only thing I could like afford to eat. It was like because all the money was going into the gym. It was insane. And yeah, I literally and I didn't was not well received by the town of Franklin Square that I lived in. They did not want another gym there. They had a gym already. So I was like fighting that battle. I was fighting the battle with my parents. I was fighting the battle with my friends. And it was war. It was a psychological war for like 3.5 years straight. Um, at that time, we were called Shredcore. That was like my awkward phase. I was the ab guy. I got everyone abs. Um, and what had happened was out of nowhere, I don't know how it happened, but I was not liked in the fitness community in that area at that time because I was not following the gimmicks. I was not following the fads. And again, this is like at the beginning of when these boutique gyms started opening up. So things like Orange Theory, CrossFit, those were just starting to open up. Like this was a very, very new concept. And even telling people over the phone, like they didn't get it. Like, what do you mean I can't come in whenever I want and just do whatever I want? What do you mean I need to set up an appointment? Like it was still, I had to educate the clientele for what this was. But I was not met with any sympathy or happiness when I opened there. It was brutal. And there was a lot of doubts, a lot of, I don't know if I can do this. And then from there, what it ended up happening, and this was not planned, I started getting these military guys that were coming in off of either deployments or they were just switching up their fitness regimen. Same thing with the NYPD, with the police, with the firefighters. And I'm like, man, we have to change the name because I can't be the ab guy while I'm training these types. It just it doesn't fit. So I wanted a name that kind of signified what we were, which is we're a place that has these morals, these values, and this culture and community that we strongly defend, and we keep all of the nonsense out. And I came across the word stronghold. It was fortress, and then I was like, that's where the name came from. So that is how that name came about in a nutshell.
I'm so glad you shared what you did because walking into your space as it stands today, it's it's beautiful. I mean, it's my speed, right? All black, nice equipment, amazing humans. You have flooring, it's not plywood.
Yeah.
Um, and you wouldn't have guessed any of that, right? You wouldn't have thought, oh, his family didn't support it, or he had no friend help, or he had a tough time with the town he was in, or, he gave everything he had into it and was eating peanut butter and ramen on the floor. Why? Why did you keep going?
You know what? That I really deep down believed that this is what I was meant to do because of the success I had as a I don't want to use the word sensei, but as a martial arts instructor. And I'm like, you know what? If this is really meant to be, it's gonna happen. If this is really meant to be, I'm just gonna work as hard as I can. This is going to work out. And I'm a firm believer. One of my favorite books is Sun Tzu, The Art of War, because I feel like you can apply it to all aspects of your life. But there's a battle where the army is outnumbered, and they go to the general like, well, what are we going to do? So what he does is he ends up taking his own army and he puts them in a corridor like with a cliff behind them. That's not a cliff, a big wall behind them made out of stone. And he goes, why are we going here? And he was like, well, when you have no other option but to go forward, your people will fight harder and they will fight as if everything is on the line when they have no. And that's kind of the position I wanted to put myself in. I wanted to grow in a different way, not physically but mentally. I'm like, this is what I'm missing. This is what I saw when I was in China, when I was in Greece. I'm like, this is something that I need to do on my own. And there's not a lot of gyms that are sole proprietors where it's one person. They have investors, they have partners, they have like these crazy loans. I didn't do any of that. So, and that's really what kept me going. And again, I think for me, I respond really well to when people say I can't do something. I really do. And in my family's defense, I understand where they were coming from. I mean, you have this guy, he's like the first one in the family to go to college. And to them, I was throwing that away, right? Um, Again, owning a gym wasn't a thing back then. It was like you worked for a big gym or that or nothing.
How does your family view all of this today?
It's definitely better. I think after they saw everyone at the gym, it's definitely gotten a lot better. It was really, yeah, it was really rough for a while, especially with friends. I lost a lot of friends. They thought I was crazy for doing this. Um, Even during COVID, when the gyms were like the worst place in the world to be. We never stopped, not once. Um, we didn't stop. I was like, this is a family. This is a community. I'm not going to abandon them. I have staff that I'm
Mm.
responsible for. And to me, it's not a gym. It's a space, right? And I think now they get it. It took a while, and I understand why now, looking back. Um, but I do understand them now. Why they had
Mm.
a hard time with it.
Yeah, I would just say for anybody listening who might not be opening up a gym or going through that specific struggle, that in general, we are the only ones who can see the vision inside our head. And, the world sees our actions, right? But we see the vision. And sometimes it's hard for other people to envision what we're envisioning and understand why we're doing the things we're doing. And on top of that, to credit anybody who cares or supports about us who might not understand. I think people tend to be afraid of things they don't understand. And for somebody wanting the best for you in that scenario, if a gym doesn't make sense or is scary, and they want you to be stable and secure and go down in a quote unquote good path. I could see that. So it makes sense, and it's interesting to hear how it's unfolded. And just kudos to you for building what you've built. And so that evolved, that first question of who are you evolved into this really hard thing that you've done. There's another hard thing that you did. And I'm wondering if, well, I'll just ask the question. What's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose outside of building the gym?
The Long Island 150. For sure. At least,
So,
yeah.
so I want to set the stage here because I'm going to play
All
an
right,
audio clip. This is the first time I've ever done this on a podcast. We're
cool.
140 episodes in. So to set the stage, I got there on day three. And so this took place on day three where you and Chris Gabayan, who's episode 126 of this podcast, you both eclipsed the 100-mile mark on that day. And it was a grind. Again, I didn't witness in person the first 2 days, but showing up on day three, watching how you guys moved, especially first thing in the morning, I could tell it was going to be a grind. And I'll let you talk about some of the low points, some of the high points, but there were moments on that day in specific where it seemed like you were losing a little bit of steam. And so to set the stage, right, I'm up ahead with a part of our group, and you're a little bit behind with a few other guys. And this text message comes through to our group, and the people listening won't be able to see the video, but just imagine it's pitch black and there's a flashlight on Stelios's face as he is running with a ruck pack on his back through the darkness, kind of coming in and out of focus of the camera. And here's the audio that pairs with that.
Fucking tired, knees hurt, my back hurts. But guess what? We're still fucking going. We're going because the part of me that got in the way fucking died 2 miles ago. And we're gonna finish this 36 miles. And we got one more. 32 tomorrow, Long Island 150. Let's get it done.
So that comes through, and I'll make that louder for the release of this so people can hear it. But what I mean, talk us through that moment. Do you remember that moment?
Oh yeah. So at that point, earlier that day, both my knees and my back had went out, and earlier in the day, I mean, completely to the point where I was with Harrison. He's, Harrison, if you're listening, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for the whole team not giving up on me. I was literally holding onto fences, fire hydrants, cars, just to get to the next checkpoint, which was 4 miles away at that point, or 3 miles away. And literally both my knees and back went out. Again, I only had 3.5 months to get ready for this. So I felt it. Later on that night, I got to mile 112. I'm in Bethpage Park, which I will never go to again, ever. I am traumatized. I will never go to that. I mean, if I go to hell, I mean that's where I'm going. That's where God is sending me. No doubt. And I'm at mile 112. And again, everything is like my insteps, my feet, my back, my groin, like on both sides, my back, and everything is done. I look like The Walking Dead. I look like a zombie. And I'm looking up and I see the trees because I'm just like, this is it. I failed. I'm a horrible person. And then you go through these horrible, you don't deserve the gym. Your daughter and your wife are ashamed of you. You're letting your clients down. You're a liability. You're ruining the event. You're letting Chris down. I mean, all these things. And then I don't know what happened. The pain went away, and I started running. And James Boria had he goes, dude, you're running like a 9-minute mile. And I looked at my watch and I'm like, yeah, I'm literally running a 9-minute mile right now, 9:30 or something like that. And I did that for like a couple miles, like 2, 3 miles. And it was really, that is what I wanted. I really wanted to just dig myself a hole that I couldn't think I could get out of and eventually pull myself out. And that's really what happened. And then I met up with you guys, and then we started running, and we went in the wrong direction, but it didn't matter. It was great.
it was a wild night, and no, it was a special moment and one that we can look back on and laugh about. And I think there are a lot of lessons to take away from that. And one is, it sounds like you had multiple moments throughout the entire ruck where you could have given in or you could have given up, or it would have made sense to throw in the towel and quit, but you didn't. And you continued to catch these waves of feeling better. And I think that's a lot of life. It's the ebbs and flows, it's the ups and downs. And maybe this can give somebody else just a little bit of hope if they are in one of those lows or they are in one of those ebbs, to just wait a little bit longer for the high, to hold out a little bit longer for that next wave of good, of what you experienced there. And I had this quote I wanted to read, and then I'll get your thoughts and we'll talk more about the ruck. But this is from Catherine May, and she said, "We are in the habit of imagining our lives to be linear, a long march from birth to death in which we must mass our powers only to surrender them again, all while slowly losing our youthful beauty. This is a brutal untruth. Life meanders like a path through the woods. We have seasons when we flourish and seasons when the leaves fall from us, revealing our bare bones. Given time, they will grow again."
Wow.
Man, what
Wow.
what what does that bring up for you? I mean, for the ruck, for the process of building the gym, just for your life in general?
Well, not to respond to your quote with another quote, but
Sure.
the saying is you only live once, and that's nonsense. You die once, you live every day. And when you find what that, again, the theme of this whole event was purpose beyond. And when you tend to build things, whether that's a physical location, a friendship, an event like this, when you do build these things, they end up building you at the same time.
Mm,
And I feel like the only way that people grow is to place themselves in positions where the piece of you that, like I said, like the piece of you that got in the way is forced to expire at a very slow and agonizing rate. Sometimes it's a little quicker, but that is necessary. And look, it's scary. It's horrible sometimes. Sometimes you lose things in the process, but sometimes the ends does justify the means in some instances. Um, and I think she said that beautifully, right? I mean, you have to shed these layers, because I think there is a trap. And you being a coach and an athlete yourself, we always tend to associate with ourselves when we were at our best, whatever
mm.
that is, without considering all the other criteria that allowed us to be in that place in the first place. Like, I'm 35 now. I have a daughter. I'm married. I have a house. I have all these other things that I did not have when I was opening up that gym. And having these things now, not that it's a crutch or anything, but it does change your perspective. That was part of my purpose. Like, my wife, which I am so thankful for, sacrificed so much time and energy to help me not just get ready for this, but to support me for this. And I'm like, man, she did all this patient work for me, and I'm just gonna let her down like this and not do it? Like, no. And finding those things is so much more meaningful than I have to do this to get 22-inch arms. I have to do this to get a six pack. I have to do this so my glutes look good in leggings. Whatever it is, right? Finding that purpose and attaching it to something that's more spiritual. That is the only way to get through these things, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more with all of that. And as we look back on the ruck and that experience, what are some of the takeaways? What are some of the lessons? What are some of the things that you look back and you realize you grew through?
I'll tell you one thing that was really, you can't do it alone.
Mm,
Having that team there, let me tell you, I had no idea how important that team was going to become. Not that I didn't appreciate people being there. But just having Jake there, having you there, Austin, people talking to me, Dan Marchese, all these guys, everyone, Harrison, Kyle, James Boria, um, Chris, obviously. Again, the community is so important. That was number one. The second thing was, again, finding the purpose that allows you to do these, like I think your slogan is, do hard things, right? The only way you do that is finding that purpose. So that, I think that would be the second thing. And then, yeah, I would say those are those. That's really what I took away from it. Do you feel like you learned the same, or was there anything that you took away that was different? Or
I definitely took away both of those things. Yeah, I think I also realized while it was happening, and then especially after the fact, that while you and Chris were the ones doing the rucking, uh, it was a journey for everybody. And even the people on the outskirts of the journey, if you will, or the people who were not directly doing the task but supporting it, we all learned and grew through the process. And we didn't only grow as individuals, but we grew together. And I think it reaffirmed for me that one of the best ways to build a bond with another person is through shared suffering or shared
yeah,
struggle. And I feel like we did that as a group. And that's something that I'll never forget.
I do, and I say it all the time. I feel like hardship does create friendship. That would be the. I mean, I knew that already, but it's always good to do that with different people as opposed to the same people all the time in the gym. Because
Mm-hmm.
I did a podcast with Chris a couple weeks ago about this. I really give him a lot of credit. I mean, he got, what were there, 10 or 12 of us?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
the majority of us never really met. I remember when we picked you up in the parking lot. You came in. I didn't know who the hell you were, other than Project Indoor. You were Joe Rinaldi, and we got along instantly. I had that with Kyle. I had that with Harrison, with Dan, with James, with Austin, with everybody. So I think there's something to be said that when you get a group of people that understand the mechanisms, the psychological mechanisms more than anything of hard work, the friendship is automatic. It's easy.
Yeah.
It was magic.
I agree with that. I remember getting into the car and our conversation just took off like we had known each other for 10 years. And
Yeah.
that's special.
Yeah.
There's another quote that is from Herman Melville that I love. And he said, "A man thinks that by mouthing hard words, he understands hard things." And I think in the world we live in today, it's very easy for people to talk about hard things. It's another thing to actually go do hard things. So I just wanted to go back briefly. What was the moment where you realized you were actually going to be along for the ride, but be part of the ride in terms of rucking? When did you decide that you were going to do this?
You mean when Chris messaged me, like
Hmm.
initially?
Yeah.
So it was really weird when Chris messaged me. I was in Greece and I was with my family, and we went to my grandparents' house. It's my grandfather's house, the one that raised me, was my father figure. And it was my first Father's Day there. And I told Chris this. I went into the house. I had not been there in a very long time because my grandparents ended up staying with us in here because they'd gotten sick. Um, so I'm in there. I'm going through my grandfather's drawer. And I find a watch that I gave him in like second grade, and he kept it. A piece of crap watch from like Macy's in the clearance section. I'm like, look at this. This guy like kept this, right? And I don't know if Chris told you, but the military has always been very, very close to me. And one of my biggest regrets is actually not joining the military. And to me, there's nothing that I could ever do that can equal what these guys do. And I always want to give back to that community. That's really a big differential with our gym. We really, really support those guys, veterans, whether they're active duty, they're veteran, or they're retired, or they're veterans. It doesn't matter. We really like to take them in. And when I found that, I was talking to Amanda, and I'm like, man, it's almost like he's talking to me. And then like 5 seconds later, I get this message from Chris, this long invite, and I'm like, holy crap, this couldn't have come at a more meaningful time. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm in. That this is it. This is it. I'm going to be with these guys. The cause was great. It was for veterans. So I was also on board with that. I think we raised like $4,200, I think. Um, and yeah, that became that's when I knew. As soon as I found that watch and I sat down, I got that message literally within 5 minutes right after. I was like, this was meant to be. I have this sign, whatever you want to call it, from my grandfather. I have this other military guy asking me to do this hard thing. It was almost like it was meant to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what's next for you when it comes to pursuits, right? You have the gym, you did the ruck. Is it more of the same and building what you're already building? Is there another ruck? Long Island 300 come to mind?
No way. Definitely not. No. I'll definitely ruck again. I don't know if I'm ever going to do that distance again. But my goal right now is to look with my. I am not interested in franchising. I do not want to be a commercialized gym. I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to train celebrities. And like I'm sure in the fitness realm, that's like you made it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd rather train. I rather train defenders than pretenders, as Mark Twight said. I rather train these military guys because I've always been fascinated with these people's lives are completely dependent on the outcome of their training. Firefighters, the NYPD, and the military. So the goal for us is to move into a bigger space, keep it there, and really make that a beacon for all military and paramilitary organizations so they have a place not just to train, but to also meet these other people to talk. Because a lot of these veterans, they have a very time assimilating back into society. And also, more importantly, reinventing themselves, which is what Chris is doing right now. And I really want to make us the hub for that. I do want it to be a place for these types of organizations where we can really provide them a place, not to just make them better professionally, but also personally. So that's the goal for me.
It's funny because a lot of the work I do is online. I do have a few in-person clients, and a few of them I do drive around to, like you said, right? It's not the length of Long Island, but it's around the city of Philadelphia. And rewind 2, 3 years ago, I was doing a lot more of that than I am right now, and it's part of the grind. But I share that because, as I've gone all around the city and as I've worked with a number of different people and had more and more conversations with people online, the words I find myself using on those calls is that my job as a coach is to help somebody bridge the gap between where they are right now and wherever it is that they want to be. And the best part of that for me and for them is that bridging the gap also involves bridging the gap between who they are right now and who they want to be. And I think fitness is an amazing vehicle for that. It's not just getting stronger, it's not just getting faster, it's not just getting leaner. Sure, those things are involved and can be involved. It's also growing as a person, as a human, as an individual, between the ears, not just the muscles. And so that resonates with me. And part of building a business, part of what you're doing requires endurance, both the ruck and otherwise. And I'm wondering for you, Stelios, when you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
To see it through until the end.
Mm.
And that's really what life is. Life is an endurance event. It really is. And it's so ironic that the thing that got us here as human beings, which was, we were we were nomads, hunter gatherers. We were doing endurance. They were rucking
Mhm.
place to place. That thing that got us here to this place, we've kind of forgotten about. in a lot of ways. And I do think there is an ancestral mechanism within ourselves that to me is almost therapeutic, that walking somewhere of meaning together in a group, that is something that I don't think we do enough as a society. Look, it doesn't have to be to, if you're a Christian, Jerusalem or Mecca. It could be, it could be to the, hey, I'm going, we're going to my grandma's house. We're going just some place of meaning. There is something to that I think we've kind of lost as a society. So to me, it's to see it through until the end, if I had to, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. I've got a question and a comment. I'll go with the comment first. I can't remember the exact wording of this quote, but there's no destination too far to walk if you have enough time. Was the idea, right? And it's not a matter of, can you get there? It's a matter of, are you willing to endure enough to get there? And it brings me to the question, which is, the end for all of us in life is death. We're all going to the same place. As the most recent podcast guest, episode 139, Calip said, we're all walking each other home. That's what life is. We're all walking each other home, right? Yeah, me too. And but the end looks different, for each of us when we're ending chapters. And I'm wondering for you, how do you know in your own life, or how do you think somebody else might know when it's time to place a comma in their sentence of their story versus a period? How do you say, I'm not there yet, and I will keep going until I reach the end, or this is the end of that chapter, and I'm not quitting, I'm just closing this one to start a new one, or I'm not quitting, I'm just pivoting. How do you think we can determine that? It's a hard question.
That's a very good question. I think the period goes when the curiosity ends. And I think the comma keeps going when you when one thing leads into another thing. So I feel like that's the problem with we'll call it success, and having an end destination. It's almost like a trap, because once you get there, where do you go? But if I place myself in these constant positions where it places me in a place where I'm continuously becoming curious about the thing, I think that's where so to answer your question, as I know it's grammatically incorrect, I think more commas, less periods. I think those periods are a last resort, when the curiosity has ended, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think that's probably very applicable to most people listening, and they can gauge for themselves how curious they are in this season, this chapter. And on that note, I've never asked anybody this on the podcast. I ask clients this all the time, but if you had to title this current chapter of your life, what would the title of this chapter be for you? You could take a second.
Oh man, when you say chapter, do you mean just the ruck?
No, let's zoom out and let's say maybe the ruck was part of this chapter, but it's the book of Stelios, it's your life. Maybe you're on chapter 5, maybe you're on chapter 10, who knows? But whatever this chapter is right now from a high level, what's the title?
Oh man. Oh man. The whole title, man. That is ooh, the whole title of this chapter, right? Not the book, the chapter,
Yeah,
correct?
just the chapter. It's funny while you think I could edit out this thinking phase, but I think I'll leave it in there because what I hope is as I'm talking and stalling and you're thinking that the people listening to this podcast can also answer that for themselves because I think it's a really nice way to kind of put a visual and some context around, well, what am I trying to get out of this part of my life? Where am I going in this part of my life? What am I learning in this part of my life? And I think a lot of times that does tie into whatever the answer is for
I
people.
I I would say it's that capability creates opportunity.
Hmm. Can you expand on that? Give us the subtitle of this title.
Sure. So I think the more capable you become, that when you become extremely capable, whatever that might be, it's fitness, it's art, it's poetry, it's cooking, what ends up happening is you start outgrowing where you are currently. And then you start meeting other people that are either just as capable, where you can have a valuable conversation, or more capable. And then from there, what happens, it kind of expands your trajectory. So now maybe you're a runner and hey, I got good at 5Ks. Now I got good at 10Ks. Now I'm a marathon guy. Maybe I go to Europe to do a marathon and I meet this running group. And I think that is the theme, because I would have never been able to interact with Chris. Like if Chris came to me the first year I was opening business, I don't think we would have had the same type of relationship as afterwards, when I went through the ringer of making this business and becoming more capable. So that's what I would say. Um, that I it's that the more you take that craft and that skill and you refine it and sharpen it and become more proficient at it, it will open doors that is the buy-in. The buy-in is you have to get better and do these hard things in order to acquire the access to the things that are going to make you better. That buy-in is, that to me, a non-negotiable, if that makes sense.
So well said. So well said. And for people listening, I would love if you could just talk a little bit about the concept of a buy-in, because right, it gets
Okay.
used in the world of fitness. It's, you can use it in the world of in a casino. You can use buy-in a lot of different ways. What do you mean by buy-in?
Sure. So the buy-in to me is a non-negotiable component that is required to give you access to something that is meaningful. That to me is the buy-in.
Mm. And if anybody out there is ever played, let's say blackjack, right? You know that you have to put. I don't gamble. I don't know what the term that they use is, right? But you've got an ante. Yeah, you have to put a chip up before you could even play, right?
Yeah.
There's a buy-in, and instead of putting a chip on a table to play a hand of blackjack and maybe win some money, your buy-in in this scenario was years of blood, sweat, and tears and endurance to stick with your gut, follow your heart, stay true to your dream, and to see that through and grow as a person to become the person needed to walk through that door that was open.
And that is the hardest part, especially in the fitness industry, is you have to, like, going back to buying, you have to be willing to take financial loss in order for your vision to draw in the right people. That antenna has to be constantly adjusted to reach the right people. And that took years, because you are going to be, especially if you're different, you are going to be misunderstood, and essentially antagonized to an extent. And you have to just take that as, hey, here it is. Here's the buy-in. Here it is. This is going to lead me to that better place that I've been looking for, essentially.
It's funny you use that wording because I've been journaling recently on the idea of being understood or misunderstood. And this phrase just kept coming up for me, which was the need to be understood is crippling. And right, if you walk through life needing other people to understand you, it will stop you in your tracks every single time.
And I think this is a good segue, because the biggest differential with our gym, other than the type of clientele that we go towards, that we gravitate towards, is the crucible. And this is really the thing that aggravated a lot of people in the area that I was in. I mean, I was thrown off of Facebook pages because of this. And I was, oh my God. So I don't know if Chris had told you about this at all. So we have this thing in the gym where it's a probation period of about so it's a probation period of about 3 months. Sometimes it's a little bit longer depending on the client. And we say, okay, what do you need to work on? Is it a weight training thing? Is it a nutrition thing? Is it a skill? Is it a race? Whatever. And within that 3 months, we're going to work on that together, along with other things. And at the end, um, you have a physical test that you have to finish that's individualized for you that corresponds to the goal. If you pass, you have earned your spot in the gym. If you fail, we give you all your money back and you get thrown out of the gym. Now, to be just a little bit to elaborate, it has nothing to do with someone's. It's a mindset thing. We want to make sure you have a willingness to learn, you can commit to a process, and that um, you can assimilate into the culture. And I wanted to do this because it doesn't just keep the client in check, but also the trainers. And you go through this process of uncertainty with this trainer, and the trainer is also, and then you come out the other side as a completely different person with something that you couldn't do prior. And I think when you do that with each individual person, and they, again, the test is individualized. Now, when these people see each other in the gym, they all know, oh, this guy must be here for a reason. And then it creates a conversation. Hey, what did you do to get in here? Oh, I did the Murph. What the hell is that? Oh, it's this. Oh, let me try it. And it becomes, for lack of a better phrase, a self-sustaining farm in terms of curiosity and shared experience. And that's the buy-in to get into the gym. So
That is amazing.
thank you. I'm glad you did so.
Let me ask you this. Did
Sure.
you have to buy in, or was your buy-in simply building it?
My buy-in was building the gym. Everyone asks me that all the time. Like, Stel, what was your buy-in? I'm like, I built the gym that you're squatting in right now. You see that floor? I put that floor down. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. So here's what we'll do. I've got a quote that I think I'll read after you answer this last question. But there are people listening to this podcast all over the world going through different kinds of struggles on the surface. But deep down, you and I both know that as human beings, we all go through hard things. And somebody out there listening is going through a hard season, a tough time. They're not sure what to do or where to go next, and you have a chance now to speak to them and say whatever you'd like. What would you say?
I would say that the confrontation that you're going through is always going to lead to understanding. And you have to, when you're going through hell, just keep going, because what's going to separate you from the people that actually do fail is that you're just going to keep trying. And you have to have absolute trust in yourself. And you cannot let that waver no matter how bad it gets. And I really do think the secret to life is finding what you love and becoming extremely good at it. And I really think once you do that, a lot of other things do fall into place. You'll find the right people in your life. You'll become somewhat financially stable and you'll have meaning. And when you're going through those, and I went through it, and when you're going through those times when you just want to give up, just remember, you may just be anywhere between 1 minute and 1 day away from success. You don't know. You could be 1 minute away. You could be, that text message could be coming in, that phone call, that email, that knock on your door. You could be a minute away from that. You have no idea. So that's what I would say.
So you actually brought up for me another quote. So I'm going to share two quotes. And the first,
I'm loving it. I'm loving this.
the first is the Stonecutter's Credo. And so it's from Jacob Reese, who said, "When nothing seems to help, I go out and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know it was not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before." And I think so often in life, like you said, we could be one more swing of the hammer away from exactly what we've been working for. And it might be on the 100th, it might be on the 101st, heck, it might be on the 1,000th, but we will never know if we stop swinging. And I think this is a personal belief that the only true failure is giving up on something meaningful.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the other quote that I was going to share and that I'll share now is from Yehuda Berg, who said the biggest breakthroughs in consciousness occur when things are difficult, when we have a choice to fall to the worst of ourselves or rise to the best of ourselves. And I wanted to share that because when you gave that imagery of having your back up against a wall, that was exactly what I imagined in my mind. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for giving yourself that wall and putting yourself in that situation, because there definitely didn't need to be that wall, but you chose to keep it there. And that's
Yeah.
very admirable.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And it really, it really is the best thing I ever did. And anyone that's looking to start a business or trying to learn something, man, you have to invest in yourself. As cliche as it sounds, you have to, because no one. And I know this kind of sounds insensitive, but at the end of the day, when you're doing something that no one's on board with, no one is coming to help you. It is up to you. You and you alone are responsible for you. And once you accept that, other people will come and help you after. But it's only until people see that you have that wherewithal to go through this, because it's war. It is, man, you are going to war every day with yourself. It's like every day. And your story, Chris told me you had said something, a quote for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, which was, what I lost in sight I gained in vision. Oh my God, unreal. That
Thank you,
is
man.
unreal.
Well, I think part of this podcast is other people getting the chance to share stories that might look or sound different from mine, but deep down below the surface are just the same. And, I think I've been very privileged in my own life to have that wall, that hardship, that struggle given to me. It's not something that I've had to go out and look for. And sure, I do. I look for those things, but that's only because I've been blessed with this one thing that I can't get rid of. And I've witnessed and I continue to witness how it shapes me into a better and better and better version of myself. And so if this thing can do that to me, I know that anyone else's struggle can do that for them. And so I hope that these stories, your story, my story, can find somebody who feels like maybe it's a little bit hopeless, or maybe they're just down in the dumps and they need a little pick me up and they need a different perspective to see how their struggle can be turned into strength. And I know for a fact that our conversation can and will do that for somebody. And so I really appreciate you sharing your story, man.
Problem. And conversation is a forgotten art form.
Agreed.
And I think that I, I just think that when you really, like you said, when you zoom out and you look at things in its entirety, you have that clarity. You really look at things objectively, and you just say, you know what? The only way I'm going to get through this is bringing myself to go through it, and not waiting for anything else. You just have to go, and whatever mistakes you, hey, that got you to the next place, you know.
Mm.
And you have to accept that.
100%. And as it's been said, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And I think a lot of times the action itself creates clarity. And I think clarity is a lot of what most of us are looking for on some level. And so, with that being said, Stelios, if people want to follow along, if people are in the Long Island area and are up for a bit of a test and a buy in, or people just want to connect with you, where's the best place for people to do that?
Yeah, so you can look us up on Instagram. Three underscores, so it's underscore 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 stronghold, and then another three underscores after that. That would be the best place to find us.
Awesome. And I'll link that in the description of this episode so it's easy to access. And as we wrap things up, Stelios, is there anything else you'd like to just throw out there for people to think about?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to thank you and the rest of the team and Chris Kabayan assembled. That is it was one of the most meaningful remarkable experience that I was ever a part of. And I thank you for that. And I thank the whole team and Chris for that. It's something that I'll always carry with me. That's always going to hold a special place with me. And then I would say that never stop asking questions about yourself. Whenever you're starting to get comfortable and you think you figured things out, just keep asking yourself constant questions. You need always be willing to have unfiltered and unapologetic assessment of yourself and the people around you. Always place yourself in places like that, because sometimes it's better to be useful than liked.
That is great wisdom there. And I would be remiss if I didn't share this, because I don't remember if I did earlier in the podcast or not, but the nickname that you left that weekend with, I think is a cool one. But it came from that video that I shared the audio from, and it is the Greek Goggins. And so David, if you're listening to this podcast, reach out to Stelios. You two need to connect. And I can't wait for that conversation to happen someday.
Absolutely. And I will be posting that video within the next couple days, because, man, that is gold.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.